Once, and only once, there were 3 little pigs who lived on the Isle of Wight. That might come as a surprise to some of you. Not a lot of people think of this story as a British folktale. In fact, there may be some folklorists out there who will insist that similar stories have existed for hundreds of years more about demons or elves or something like that. But we know this story of the 3 little pigs. Don't go asking me exactly where on the Isle of Wight the 3 little pigs lived. Sadly, the site of their homes has not been discovered by any archaeologists. But we do know for sure that they must have lived somewhere in the Shanklin area, as that is where this story was remembered for hundreds of years before these 3 little pigs became world famous. So, if you'll forgive the repetition, once and only once there were 3 little pigs. These piggy triplets had been lovingly raised by their wise old sow mother, and she had done her very best to prepare them all for the harsh world outside their cosy sty. But there came a time, sadly, when the sty really was far too poky for the 4 of them, and so the old sow mother called her wee sons around her and said, "I always feared the day this moment would come, but it is time for my 3 darlings to make their way in the world all on your own." And so she gave each of the 3 brothers a satchel filled with jam sandwiches and milk and told them, "Remember, I've always told you to use your brains, my darlings. It is a big, bad world out there if you do not know what you are doing. But you will take a mother's love with you, whatever happens." So they all hugged and kissed, and they said their goodbyes. With the sun rising high up in a blue sky, the first of the 3 little pigs had a look around. He set out to make a home for himself. So he looked about to see what he could use to make his own shelter from the wind and worry of the world. He needed to build his own house, his own home. And what did he see all about him but bales and bales of straw? "I am a very clever pig," he chortled to himself as he whistled and wove a wonderful cosy house of straw. It had a thick thatched roof and raffia carpets, and once he'd brought in some apples and a chair or two, he felt gloriously comfortable. But then, that night, there came a tapping at the door. Well, I mean, it was actually more of a kind of a rustling, as the door itself was also made of straw. But out of the darkness of the forest sauntered the big bad wolf. Ha 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 ha! What's funny? Joke I just thought of. Okay, right. This was, you see, a time when wolves were still roaming the forests of Britain, and the Isle of Wight was no exception in that regard. This wily wolf, oh, very much, yes, very wily, this wily wolf was the main big bad thing that old Mother Sow had most urgently warned the 3 little pigs about. He was indeed big, and he was terribly bad, and he liked nothing more than the savoury taste of a nice, fat, juicy porker slipping down into his cavernous belly. The 3 little pigs would repeat to themselves, "Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Not us!" Although one would occasionally jump in fear and have to be put back in his place. Anyway, they got them to sleep at night by saying to each other, "Are you afraid of the big bad wolf?" "No, I'm not afraid of the big bad wolf." "Not me." "Are you afraid of the big bad wolf?" "Not me," and so on. And very rarely did they actually get any decent sleep. But that was their mantra, if you like. But in truth, they were all very, very afraid. And that night, the big bad wolf gave a cough and cried out, "Good evening, little pig." And the first pig sat bolt upright in his cosy straw bed and hiccuped, Who is it?" Little pig, let me come in." No, by the hairs on my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." Well, I mean, come on. I mean, this was such an unneighbourly suggestion. I mean, no manners, some wolves. It was all the biggest pig needed to be certain that this was the big bad wolf outside his door. But it was too late to do anything about it now. The big bad wolf took a great run up inflated his lungs fit to burst, and he literally simply blew that house of straw right away, and the poor pig sat quaking in the ruins of his house, and the big bad wolf advanced on him. The rest is bacon. But what of the second pig? Well, this pig, little Jumpy I call him, he fancied himself the most intelligent of the lot, of course. He knew that straw made for very poor housing material and decided he would have to go the extra mile. As the sun blazed down high in the sky, this pig went into the woods and came out with bundles of twigs, which he happily entwined, whistling as he did so, until a whole new home stood before him, a wickerwork masterpiece. "I am a clever pig," he said, and he brought in some pears and his favourite blanket, and soon felt extremely cosy in his little house of twigs. But then, that night, came the tapping at the door. Okay, it was actually more of a kind of a rattling sound, the door being entirely made of twigs, but let's move on. Who is it?" squeaked the second pig. Little pig, let me come in." No, by the hairs of my chinny chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." He was loving every minute of this, the big bad wolf. Once again, before the pig could even cry out for assistance, the big bad wolf took the deepest breath ever. And he blew that house of twigs right away. Let's draw a veil over what happened next. That poor second pig. The big bad wolf licked his slavering lips and moved in. The rest is sausages. So, there was only one little pig left, the last little pig of the three. This little fella, he knew that life without his old sow mother was not going to be easy. "I am not the cleverest of pigs," he said to himself, "but because of that, I must always make a special effort to do my best." And so the third pig sat down and had a long, hard think. Think, as the blazing sun began to dip down to the horizon. There was plenty of straw, he saw, but that was of no real use, surely. Maybe he'd go to the wood and fetch some twigs of some kind, timber, but carpentry was not his strength, he felt. What else could he do? Then he finally had his brainwave. "Mud!" he chortled. "Glorious mud! There's acres of it around, glooping and thick. If I can take some of that and heat it in a fire, it will bake into hard bricks, and I can build myself the strongest house of all." This obviously took quite a bit of time, so he baked and built every day, whistling a merry tune as he worked away, and he hid himself in the forest roots at night where nobody could get at him. Eventually, this third pig could stand back and admire his own pretty brick house, with a roof of wood and slate, all safely glued together with more thick muddy clay mixed with sand from the beach. Lovely beach at Shanklin, as I recall. He even had a little chimney on the top, and soon that chimney was puffing away nicely as he put a pot on the fire and made himself a piping hot vegetable stew to celebrate. But then came the tapping at the door. A proper rap this time at the knocker that the pig had put on. The third pig squinted through a small hole he'd put into the door to protect himself from strange visitors, and he saw right away who it was. The big bad wolf, his tummy bloated with his last two rich dinners, drool still sagging from his jaws as he looked forward to yet another porky treat. Little pig, let me come in." No, by the hairs on my chinny chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." God, he's really going for it this time. He really tried, that big bad wolf. He took a run up, but he knew that he couldn't get anywhere near that door. And this is where the story differs from the famous one that Mr. Walt Disney and so on will have told you before. And this is where Shanklin comes into it, because This wolf was quite wily, as I said. Thank you very much. Look, yeah, you're wily, all right. So, in his wiliness, he decided to try a different tack this time. He knew that this pig had more brains than his brothers, so he tried something different. Little pig, what I was thinking is, yes, I know where we can get hold of some wonderful turnips. Do you like turnips? I love turnips. Well, I know that old Farmer Smith has some fantastic turnips in his lower field. Okay, so what if I come and pick you up in the morning and we can, saunter down and take our pick? Okay, it's a deal. What time suits you? How about 6 a.m.? It's a bit early, but all right, I'll see you at 6 a.m. All right, bye-bye. Yes. And the pig knew straight away that this was some special con of this nasty wolves, and so the pig got up extra early at 5 o'clock, went down to Farmer Smith's field and picked all the turnips himself. So when the wolf turned up an hour later, "Are you ready for those turnips?" "Oh, I've already been down and got them all. Lovely, great. Would you like one? I don't mind sharing a turnip with you. It's they're all bobbling away on the fire." Thought the wolf. In fact, he actually said it. He said, but he tried it again. He said, now, but what are you having for afters, little pig? Because I know where there are the finest, ripest apples down in Merry Garden. What say we go down there and pick some together? Well, maybe, said the pig. What time would you think would be good for that? How about 5 o'clock in the morning? Do you ever sleep? Well, I'm a wolf. Well, okay, 5 o'clock in the morning it is. And the wolf went away again. And of course, we already know what happened. That pig got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, went to Merry Garden and picked all the apples for himself. And when the wolf came up, "Coming for a bit of scrumping, little pig." "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said 4 a.m, so I've already been and got them all. Would you like one?" And he threw an apple so hard that the wolf had to run miles to go and get it, and the pig was safe for another day. But later that day, the wolf returned out of breath. Although he did have a nice apple, but it still wasn't enough for him. He said, little pig, why don't you and I go on a date?" This is a bit weird. I'm a pig, you're a wolf. Well, not that kind of date. Just a day out, let's say, to Shanklin Fair. Oh, Shanklin Fair, that sounds nice. Yeah, Shanklin Fair. We could go there tomorrow. Okay, what time do you think? 4 a.m? Is it open at 4 a.m? Probably. It's a weird time. Okay, see you then. And so he went off. And of course, the next morning, the pig got up at 3 a.m. and went all the way to Shanklin Fair. And bizarrely, it was actually open. And he bought himself a butter churn, a big wooden thing with a big stick in it that people used to make to churn butter. And he bought it for himself, and he stood on the top of the hill, just outside Shanklin Fair, and he saw the wolf come up, licking his lips, waiting to just scoff the pig down in one big gulp. And then the pig got in the butter churn, and he rolled down that hill and chased the wolf far, far away so he could never get in. And the wolf knew what had happened, and the wolf finally worked it out just by the time the pig got in and slammed the door behind him, and he ran up to that house. And now the story takes on the familiar pattern that we know. "I'm gonna blow your house in." "No, you're not, it's too strong." "Gosh, he's right. But he tried anyway. He took a big breath. He took a big run up. He filled his lungs with all the breath he possibly could. And he blew and he blew and he blew until he was purple in the face. He panted and he gagged and he groaned, but the house of brick still stood strong. "Look, what exactly do you want, wolf?" piped up the pig. "I am not afraid of you." "Well, why should you be afraid?" panted the exhausted wolf. "Well, I'm just a neighbour welcoming you to the neighbourhood. It's a pretty house, well done. Let's both go to the fair again." "Well, I saw you at Shanklin Fair and I just..." "It was you! I'm going to get you, you wily pig!" And so "Curses!" cried the big bad wolf. "Nobody talks to me like that! Nobody chases after me in a butter churn, you future supper, you! If I can't blow your house in, I'll just have to find another way. Just you wait, piggy wiggy wiggy woo!" The pig went inside his house and he waited. And then he heard a noise up above on his roof. The big bad wolf was clambering around all over the roof, over the tiles of the house of brick, and creeping towards the chimney. He was going to squeeze down into the house and have that pig in his belly, whether the pig liked it or not. And the pig did not like that idea one tiny bit. The pig was more cunning than the big bad wolf, however. When he heard those claws clattering over his roof and guessed what the big bad wolf was up to, he quickly built up the fire that was still crackling away in the grate and moved his red-hot pot of bubbling, boiling turnip stew into the right spot and gave it a big stir. The big bad wolf was certainly big, and without question he was very, very bad. But he was not all that clever. He never stood a chance once he jumped down that chimney, woo, and into the hot stew. Wow! Oh! 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 He howled, and he cried, and he steamed, but soon he simmered, and he never troubled another poor piggy wiggy woo ever again. The rest is happy. The third pig was warm and cosy in his house of bricks for a long lifetime, and he dined that very evening on piping hot wolf stew. Wolf stew is of course absolutely disgusting, but he didn't mind because he was a pig. The end.